Hi, my name is Nick Peters. I'm the Acre Group Operations Manager. We have locations in Melbourne and Sydney. I'm a hospitality professional about 20, 25 years, and I've worked through Eastern Europe, the Med, and Australian Eastern Seaboard, and I'm now based back in Melbourne.
What are the 2 to 3 biggest challenges a business manages on a weekly basis at the restaurant level?
2 main ones, especially in hospitality in Australia, is labour cost v customer expectation. Yep. We're sort of at the point now within hospitality where I tell people that I'm as much in the hospitality business as I am in the managing expectations business. Yep. Whether that's the onset of people knowing more, people having more of an outlet to, for want of a better term, vent their frustrations about venues that they've been at. Yep. There's now a clear path for people to let venues know how they feel. More often than not, they don't actually tell the venue, which is annoying, but that's another sort of rabbit hole.
You think with sort of the internet and social, there's almost like an entitlement. I'm entitled to tell you how I feel.
Yeah, I guess the thing is that if an Aussie had a shit time at a place, they tell you everything was great and they just never come back.
Yes.
And now they'll go home, have a glass of fucking Merlot and get in and sort of get stuck into you on 2 or 3 platforms.
Yes.
It's a bit of a downer, but they're bag, you know. Yep. And I guess the other side of that is managing labour costs, because in the majority of hospitality businesses that I'm aware of that my friends own and run and that I either co-own or manage, it's without a doubt our biggest running cost, and it's the thing that causes us the most headache. And it's that thing of people need to be paid what they're worth, and I get that. Australia's an expensive place to live. Yep. If people in hospitality were paid the money that they deserve, then I don't think there'd be that many hospitality venues open. The average Joe thinks that food is still cheap. They don't understand that you need to have a certain GP or COGS figure in there to be able to operate.
Yep.
Because you can buy chicken for $11 at Coles. They think that you should be selling chicken for $11 in your restaurant. And again, that comes back to that customer expectation piece. Yep. They're the 2 main things, really. Within the customer expectation piece, that covers, like I said, your COGS and your GP. That covers your labour expenditure as well. It's going to cover aesthetics. It's going to cover a whole sort of gamut of areas. But that's the main things to concentrate on. And then the other is maintaining relevance whilst increasing awareness.
And I suppose a follow-on question for that, which isn't the easiest question in the world, how do you do that? You know, that's probably a quarter by quarter thing that you're very, very conscious of, but how do you think about that?
You kind of need to be a bit organised. Yeah. Before, this is my experience anyway, you could kind of get away with sort of doing stuff.
Yeah.
That was before there were POSs and Yum and software.
Platforms and
fucking cash in a till, right? It was great.
Yes.
Because I was a kid and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But nowadays, if you don't have a 30, 60, 90-day rolling kind of plan, you're probably in the shit a little bit, just because things can change really, really quickly now. There's an insane amount of new stuff popping up. I'll be Melbourne specific. There's a great number of people doing really amazing stuff in Melbourne.
Yep.
And it really keeps you on your toes, and it's great, and it pushes you to want to do better. And I think that goes back to that relevance thing.
Yep.
The increasing awareness thing, I guess you've got to look at your point of difference. I kind of break a venue's performance down into 3 things. There's the venue, there's the offer, and there's the service, to be sort of simplistic, right? 9 out of 10 places in Melbourne will nail 2 of those things.
Yep.
Venue, offer, or service, right?
When you say offer, just help me understand that.
Menu, pricing.
Yeah, okay.
And most places it's either it's in a shitty food court, but the people there are really friendly and the food's awesome and a reasonable price.
Yep.
Or you go to a place, the venue's amazing, the service is really good, and the food's expensive. You kind of get what you pay for, right?
Yes.
So that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing.
Yes.
And my philosophy with that is if you can do more than 2 out of those 3, if you can do like 2.75 out of those 3, you're probably doing okay. Because again, Melbourne, Sydney specific, because that's sort of what I'm doing at the minute, it's not okay just to be good anymore. Good is a bit shit. And if you're doing great, you're probably just doing good.
There's a concept I'm aware of in the cafe space where I think they say in Melbourne in particular, if you get to 3 years, you're going to be okay. But getting to 3 years is like the hardest thing in the world. In the more restaurant space, in your experience, what does that time frame look like?
80% of hospitality businesses fail within the first 18 months, right? And the main reason that they fail is because they're undercapitalized, because people think that you just kind of open a place up and I'm an accountant and you're an architect, but we like going out for dinner and we watch MasterChef and it's awesome. Yes. We fucking know what food looks like, so let's open a joint.
Yep.
It's kind of not like that. I know people that have been in this for quite some time, and they're probably still better off putting their money into term deposit, even with interest rates as low as they are. And that's kind of the shit truth of it. And there's the other side of that where a lot of people are in hospitality, and what they've done literally is they've just bought themselves a job. And it's kind of like, yeah, look, I can pull a little bit of cash out, but not much anymore because the fuckers like Mr. Yum, right? And
we'll edit that.
leave it in,
I'm joking.
warts and all. Where, you know, before you could get in and probably see a little bit of cash, not that I ever used to if the government's listening, but you could see a little bit of cash and you'd probably do okay. Whereas now, there's not much there. And if you're running a cafe business, let's say, and it's 7 days a week, and you're there 6 days or 7 days, you're probably doing 12 hours a day at least, plus all your paperwork. You're probably doing 80, 90 hours. You're probably paying yourself like 65 grand a year if you're really lucky. So you're working for like $12 an hour or whatever the math is, right? So it's either like realize that maybe you need to go and learn something, realize that you might be doing the wrong thing, realize that you may have come into it with not enough money, or realize that there's probably some tech out there that can give you a hand with it.
The biggest challenge is Hospo business at the corporate level. So now you're not just, as you said, restaurant owner working 12 hours a day in one location on the tools. You're now in a position where you obviously have to have coverage of that, but you're also, think about your setup here with the farm, and the thought process has gone into all of that. And I suppose this speaks to the relevance component you were alluding to. But what are those challenges at the more corporate level as you think about my year with seasons and COVIDs and all the rest of it? Can you help me understand a bit more about that?
I've tried to work out for a long time whether people are jerks before they become landlords or whether being a landlord turns them into a jerk.
Yeah.
Most landlords aren't necessarily the most supportive people. And I get that because it's still a commercial relationship, right? There's generally some form of angst between a landlord and their tenant, and it's unfortunate that that's the way that it is.
Is it because they don't really understand hospitality business?
Probably, and there's also a bit in there where people like having hospitality businesses within their venues because people still think hospitality is cool. It's not. But it's like, yeah, I've got Mama Cedar in my building. I've got a hotel, whatever it might be. But they don't really understand what that means. And that's okay. I used to own a bar in St Kilda called George Lane, which is a bit of a party bar. And it got to the point where I was so tied up with VicPol, VCGLR, so liquor licensing, body corporate, council, fucking tenants association, whatever it was, that I hardly had time to run the joint. That's just because I saw there was a funny Batuta post, I think it was yesterday, Batuta Advocate, the best, right? And it was something like the ATO is putting a renewed focus on getting all their money out of small businesses so that multinationals can keep their tax breaks. It feels a bit like that sometimes, and I'm not sort of saying, woe is me, or, help me out, I'm defenseless or anything like that, but everyone's got their hand out. Take from that what you will, and sometimes that's difficult because, especially as a business owner, then you're probably reverting to, I've just bought myself a job, fuck.
And that comes back to, as you said, about having a bit more of a plan.
Exactly, yeah. And it's also, I get contacted a bit about people that are sort of new-ish to owning their own businesses and need help with renewing leases or what that looks like, or should I ask for a market review, or what was CPI, or how does it all work, and all that kind of stuff as well. Because there's not really anyone out there that, from my limited experience in it, there's not really anything out there formally where you can sort of cut your teeth on negotiating leases, because people are going to fuck you over. And they're going to tell you it's 5% increases, and they're going to get you on 3-year terms rather than 5-year terms, and they're going to kind of try and bend you over. And they don't mind if the place sits there vacant for a year because they own the fucking freehold anyway, but they'll get what they can from you in the meantime. I'm not saying that it's right or it's wrong. It's just a bit rough. I think a lot of the time that people hide behind the guise of, well, it's just business. I get that it's just business, but we're also all human beings, right? And the relationships that I try to build with people on a corporate level through to a supplier, an employee level, is that there doesn't always have to be a winner and a loser from every interaction or every transaction. Like, there's a sweet, generally, if you're both relatively mature people, there's generally a sweet spot in there where both parties can walk away from it thinking, I did okay out of it. And that's sort of what I try to find. That's what I'd like to think that I try to find a lot of the time in any of these sort of interactions.
It's interesting because, when you talk about landlords and leases and commercial/corporate, as you said, it's almost okay to say that's just business. But when I'm your customer in your restaurant ordering food from your menu, that is also just business. But it's not okay for you to say to me, the customer, you didn't like the salmon?
Fuck you.
Fuck yourself.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. But
We're
it seems
in a
to
pinch.
be it seems to be okay when it's two people across a table over a document.
Exactly, yeah.
Theory.
Especially when it's clear that one person needs the other person a lot more. I don't want this to sound like I'm sort of jaded or anything. It's just kind of the realities of it, you know.
Look, I worked in finance for many years, and it doesn't matter. I won't mention the name. I did a lot of work with a very large supermarket organisation where they're having exact same challenges and problems. Well, they're not. Sorry, their licensees, their lessees are having exactly the same problems with them. So it's and you know this is across industry.
I've worked with some franchising stuff before, and it's kind of like just get them on the hook.
Yeah.
Get them on the hook, and at least you'll have them for X amount of time.
Yeah.
Lead them, and then you'll find some other sucker.
I also think there's the way a commercial property is valued for sale is not the same as the way a house is valued for sale. It's all about the prospective future improvement value versus like its actual property square meterage value today, and that just plays right into this problem.
Exactly.
So,
and I guess also when you think about everything's for sale, obviously, right?
Yep.
And it's also like a lot of people open a hospitality business thinking I'm going to keep it forever, and then the commercial realities of it kick in, and they think I need to sell this thing, right?
Yep.
And the way that the industry is set up is that there is no more goodwill, right?
Yep.
It's bullshit.
Yep.
You can't tell anyone you're taking cash anymore. Not that fucking we have for years and years and years most places.
Yep.
But you used to be able to get away with a bit of a nod and a wink to people, and it was sort of there was an almost I guess not fraternal atmosphere, but you kind of knew what each other were doing, and that was okay.
Yep.
But it's more so to the point now where kind of stuck, and because multipliers have been decreasing in hospitality, where you used to be able to get maybe 3.5 times the multiplier of net or whatever that might look like now. Might have looked like then. It's nowhere near that now. And you compare that to tech, where it's like, I'll give you 10 times the multiplier on your fucking revenue. And it's like, your revenue?
Yes.
Not the net. Oh, yeah, well, our GP's 10%, or our GP's fucking 90%. Our COGS are 10%, whatever it is.
Yep.
It's just like, good on them. That's great. Yeah, it's just, and I get that, hospitality is full of people that never did any tertiary education. I get it, right? And it also feels like we're on the front line, but we keep getting left behind, if that makes sense. Like, there should still be things like JobKeeper and stuff in hospitality, no doubt. But they won't, because what does it matter if a few more small to medium enterprises kind of fall by the wayside? Well, it means a lot, because
I think there's almost a mindset that because, as you talked about earlier, 80% of businesses fail within 18 months. And that's kind of like, for want of a better description, that's kind of what everybody understands. And so if businesses are going out of business, that's just what happens.
It's kind of happening anyway.
They're putting it up to, yes, that's what happens, versus, no, it's happening because of a product of the current market conditions.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the thing, like, I've got a couple hundred people's rents and mortgages on my shoulders, I want to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah, and also the people who you are responsible for are probably not, I don't want to say mature in a negative way, but they're probably not mature in terms of the way they think about money, the way they think about budgeting, and
they've just got a different skill set, right? Or they're at a different stage in their life.
Yes, life stage.
Yeah. Just because I'm over 40 now with kids, like, I don't expect everyone to get it.
Yeah.
And why should they? It's like when people expect a casual to come in and do 12 hours a week and give a fuck as much as the manager.
Yeah.
They're unicorns, those crew, right? They just want to come in, make some beer money and get out. I get it. I'm not sure if I'm answering that.
You absolutely are. It's fantastic context, because if we can understand this is the way, probably not minute by minute on a day-to-day basis, but this is overall how you think about the situation, it just helps us have a greater appreciation for it.
Yeah.
This is probably very broad, and forgive me, as an operator, what occupies your focus? And I suppose it does change depending on the time of day. Like if you're doing a dinner service, maybe at that moment you're focused in the moment.
Yeah.
But I suppose over a month, what occupies your focus? Like what floats to the top of something you need to be on top of on a monthly basis?
First thing is customer experience, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that I see it is, without people putting money in that box, none of us have got a fucking job.
Yep.
So that's kind of paramount, right? And then from there, it's probably looking at what are the sort of key indicators we look at to establish the health of the business.
Yep.
There's a few we look at, like we discussed sort of on our little tour. There's venue visitation. Well, there's site visitation. Then there's what percentage of that site visitation ends up in our venues? What does the spend per head look like in those venues? What are people saying about us, whether it's fucking Google, Facebook, Instagram, fucking Zomato, fucking Open Table, Yum, whatever. We review that every Monday or whatever it might be, and we've got some sort of protocols in place to deal with that kind of stuff. And we've got within the team different KPIs depending on which platform it is. And what they're referring to. Everyone's opinion is valid because it's theirs. I get that. So if they're putting it out there, and I was kind of joking a bit before, right? But if they're putting it out there, then we should at least take a second to look at it.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that it's right, but we should still there.
And you,
it's data.
Yeah, you can make a judgment call yourself as to whether it was a fair comment or whether it's just somebody who's just out to.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time, people just want to be heard, right? And then if you go past that, it's probably like, well, should I leave my fucking ego out of this, or do I need to recognise that they haven't left theirs? Basically, right? So there's understanding the health of the business. There's other indicators like we look at our bookings as well. We look at how far in advance people are booking.
Yep.
Obviously, the further in advance people are booking, the more they're valuing that experience.
Yes.
And then you've also got to look at what kind of bookings are they? Are they booking for mum's birthday in 3 months? Are they booking for a christening and it's going to be 30 of them in 6 months? When there's those kind of things, it makes you realise that the people that are making these bookings or inquiries or whatever it might be, they trust you. Which comes back to what you said at the start of this, right? For us, it's all about trust, and I try to instill that through people that I work with and everything. That whole thing of they don't need to like me, they just need to respect me. It's kind of bullshit, right? Like, it's about trust, If someone's willing to come and drop X amount of money and have their wedding at your venue, then they fucking trust you, right? You gotta respect that. And when we're sort of seeing those things in venue, then that's a good sign that we're starting to that we're doing the right thing. Another thing that we'll look at as well is sort of leading onto that is larger event inquiries, and whether that's, again, venue dependent. Is it 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200 people? Is it X amount? Is it 4X amount? How far in advance is it? And then we'll look at how often we're getting those through the week and how often we're closing those as well, as in sort of people trusting us with a deposit too, which again is that trusting as well. And then you lead into socials as well, obviously engagement, what that looks like. Are people hitting you back on the DMs? And then again, leading into EDMs, how often are they opening it? How often are you getting click-throughs? And just kind of going from there. And that sort of creates a picture of what are they valuing? What are they looking for further in the experience? What are the reviews telling us? What's the feedback are we getting from staff? And kind of builds, I almost call it like a sphere of understanding. Like you get a more 3D picture of what's going on.
And how, with what frequency does that feed back into the decision that you make? You're tracking it, on a weekly basis, but at what
Every
point?
day.
Every day. Okay.
And as I've progressed through hospitality as well, and this is again probably me being a bit naive earlier, my time, especially with the advent of a lot more tech or hospitality tech, a fair chunk of my time is spent on that.
I was going to say, amongst your peers and colleagues and friends in the industry, how much is that? Whatever the tech is, be it a Mr. Yum or a Facebook or whatever, how much time do you spend with that?
Heaps. You used to write a roster, you just write it on a bit of paper. See you tomorrow, man. What time? I don't know, 6,
Yeah.
We're getting, Counter, which is our POS, feeding through to Deputy, which is our labour software. That's going to tell us minute by minute, hour by hour, what we're looking like compared to the KPIs that we've got in place. Crazy shit, right?
If you don't want to say, don't worry, but what would a KPI mean in that sense? Not being overstaffed or understaffed? Like, how do you...
There's a bit of a sweet spot, and this is where you still know that human element, because you're going to get red numbers before you open. You're going to get red numbers when you've closed, because computers don't recognise that you need to open venues and close venues. And more often than not, what the feedback is from the data is that you've got too many staff on opening and closing, and you've got not enough staff on when you're busy. And then it comes back to a recruitment thing, right? And then it's like, how are you going to find staff that want to do an hour and a half a fucking night? You can't. And it's mean to think that you can. Like, who's going to do that? Which then leads you down the rabbit hole of, all right, what's my labour revenue, what's my labour expenditure looking like? And then you've got to look at, this is where you can pull some good data. Who's selling? Who sells the most? What day do they sell the most? What do they sell the most of? Which section is it that they're working in that makes them, like, there's all that kind of stuff as well.
That sort of peak and trough in terms of the starting hours and the finishing hours, does that even itself out though over time? Look at the day, yes, you've overinvested, but over a quarter, shall we say, does it sort of even itself out?
Depends on how far in advance you look at it. I think the challenge here is that we were open for 4 months and then closed. And then so what I found is, and this has happened in your businesses before, can I bring that? Is that generally this is your revenue, right? From opening.
Yep.
This is your start date or whatever, and this is throughout your, and then you sort of back off at some stage, right?
Yep.
And then what generally happens with your staffing is kind of not sure of what's going on, and then you see it too late and you go, oh, Jesus, we've got to get more staff on.
Yep.
And then, sorry if you already know this.
No, I don't.
And then you've got, like, that's your sweet spot in here, right?
Yes. Yes.
Sort of in here, right? And then you kind of keep these staff on for longer than they should be before you realise, oh, no, the revenue's dropped off again.
Yes.
So you're kind of not providing a good enough experience to people here.
Yep.
You're pretty good in here. And then you're fucking losing money there.
Yes. Yes.
It's that fine line of you kind of need to be on it the whole time.
Yes. Yes. That's
your pause or your cameras or your whatever probably isn't going to tell you that. Like, it's still feel.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be some seasonal indicators.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you don't know if the summer is actually going to really be a boom or if that'll end up scaring people away. You know, as I look at our revenue data from venues, I'm thinking winter should correlate to more, but it doesn't. It correlates the other way because nobody goes out. You'd rather stay home than go into the venue and enjoy
at least for the first 6 weeks of winter
Yes.
in Melbourne, because everyone buys a new coat and then they fucking go out in their new coat.
Yes. Yes.
6 weeks always. Regardless of if it's the end of March or June,
Yeah.
that first cold snap, you watch, mate. 6 weeks,
Yeah.
pop the collar.
Yeah. It's
you
interesting
go.
looking at transaction database and seeing that trend already coming through.
And so, again, with this, I try not to get caught with my pants down with it, with that sort of revenue versus labour expenditure. And that's, again, why I spend a bit of time on the health of the business and see what that looks like, so that when we can start to see sort of shimmies in either of those two, we can kind of react to it relatively quickly.
When it comes to a vendor of any description, be that the guy who's going to do your kitchen fitting, be that you don't need a supplier for produce, but you know what I mean, some of the produce that you buy in, or a tech partner, what are you looking for and why? And do you have, I'm sure each discipline will have its own nuances, but do you have an evaluation criteria?
Service.
Service.
That's it.
And help me understand, this is a really naive question, but what does service mean to you?
Service means to me, the coffee machine always breaks down at fucking 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Yes.
And the POS always breaks down at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. Don't tell me you're going to come on fucking Monday. If the dishwasher's broken at 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon, fucking always, I fucking need your ass here. You know? And I get that you're going to sing me the weekend rate. I get it. But just be cool about it.
And how does somebody help you appreciate that they're going to be there before you've really started the... You know, I'm pitching for your business as your coffee machine supplier.
Yeah.
How do you know that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do?
Personally or in general? Or
A bit of both. Like, if I come to you and I say, look, I've got 50 recommendations from all of your surrounding colleagues, does that carry weight? Is it reputation? Is it
does
network?
to a degree, yeah. But it's also, I think, it's probably just an experience thing as well, in that I've had a lot of people offer me a lot of stuff over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And you kind of know when they walk in if they're just trying to fleece you or
Fly by
not.
night, yeah.
I guess not a referral, what's it called? Someone says something good about you and you
Endorsement, recommendation.
It's probably an endorsement. I take them with a bit of a grain of salt, because usually I think there's some kind of...
Yeah, it's very
something in
easy
there.
to get people who really like you to talk about you.
It's really easy, right? It's more often than not, it's generally through word of mouth. I know a guy that's done this or done that, and they're really great. And that
Or if
carries heaps of weight.
If they had the experience that you're worried about and said person's really stepped up, that's going to carry a lot of weight.
100%, yeah.
And those things they float to the surface more than capability. Of course, price is going to be a factor. Of course it is. But those
It's
are
not the
things
end
that-
factor, though.
No.
Yeah, it's more so... I guess there's two things in it. I guess there's three things. One thing is, can you trust them? The second thing is, can you see there being a relationship there? The way that I see it in any relationship, if it's financial or business or personal, right? If the relationship's difficult, then you're probably in the wrong relationship. There's heaps of people out there that you can shag, and there's heaps of people out there that you can do business with, right? And I guess the other thing is as well, and this is me probably being a little bit pig-headed, is dealing with those providers, I guess, is that there's either an underlying understanding or an explicit understanding that I'm still the client, you know? And I think a lot of the time, going back to what you said earlier, people in our position where we're dealing with end users, we get sort of pinched or squeezed or whatever you want to call it, in that, just, you know, they've got to fucking deal with it. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of people out there doing a lot of good stuff. You just got to find them.
So as much as you need to be looking at, what is the next thing in each discipline.
And I will say as well is that I also recognise that that's a two-way street. Pay your fucking bills. Answer the phone when someone needs you, Don't just be uncontactable because something's got to 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is. Yeah. Don't do what I was just saying to you that other people try to do to us.
Yeah. And equally, like you say, you need to feel comfortable that you can pick up that phone to somebody and go, hey, look, I'm really up against it.
Yeah.
I need some help. Yeah. Or vice versa.
Exactly.
I can ring you up and ask the question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is a little bit more about you and the persona of business operator / venue manager / CEO, all of the positions that you occupy. When is the best time in your week to reach you, like physically reach you? If somebody wants to pick up the phone or get your attention on an email, and I appreciate you probably have about 10 seconds a week for email, but when is the best time to reach you?
Probably after the weekend's died down, which is generally Tuesday. Because obviously you want to review what's just happened. Yep. You want to look at what's coming up.
And for you in particular, Monday sounds like it's your check on the business health.
Exactly, yeah. So all the figures from all the venues come in on a Monday. There's conversations with location and area managers, Yep. There's looking at what's coming up as well as what's just happened. Yep. Then you kind of go, huh? And then that's the best time to hit people up. And that changes for every business, of course,
Yes.
But generally that's the best for us.
If you got a phone call from an unknown number on your mobile phone at 8:30 on a Tuesday, how would you respond to that?
I'd probably be close to picking it up.
And what about if somebody did the same thing on a Saturday?
Nope.
Saturday is, I'm absolutely ready to go for the weekend. Don't bother me.
Yeah. Well, depending. Me currently, no, not a lot of the time. But if it's about something to do with that they want something out of you, or they want your business, or this or that, or if it's a supplier like Mr. Yum, just checking in, dude, we're going to make 25% of our weekly revenue, or 30, anywhere up to 35% of our weekly revenue today. Fuck off.
I love it.
Thanks, but fuck off.
That's good. That's really valuable because to let you on the inside of the way not our business, but tech businesses think, we would come up with the idea of, well, let's call them on a Saturday because nobody's going to call them on a Saturday.
Yeah, because you guys think that, like, not you specifically, but it's like, hey, we've got to let them know that, we're like 24/7 business, so we'll call them outside of the general hours. Yeah. Good. I'm not going to answer it.
What does innovation look like in your businesses, but also probably in hospitality? And that's regardless of whether it's technology or Mr. Yum. To me, what you've done here with the farm, that's innovation.
Thank you.
And so you could just answer and leave your answer there. But what else? Because this is obviously a tremendous amount of forethought that you've gone in here.
Provenance. Making the data work for you, recognising that there are people out there that want to help.
Even just recognising that there's data that you can actually, physical data you can leverage, not just anecdotes anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to take some of the guesswork out of it, but you still need to maintain that human interaction, right? And I guess with that, it's almost like hospitality operators didn't get into hospitality to sit in front of a fucking computer. Yep. My time now is sitting in front of a computer, like 60%, maybe more than that. And if that's the case and we're trying to access data, then help us access it easier and help us get what we want from it. And maybe hold our hand. Don't just be like, all right, here's a thing that you can watch.
And rather than and I'm not saying Mr. Yum, but rather than us as tech prescribe this is what you want, actually come along and say, hey, we can do all these cool things. What here is actually important.
Customize it, yeah, exactly. Because we're still customizing every experience for every person that walks in the door to some degree. Help us out and do the same.
I think the point you said earlier on about, the data around somebody making a booking, how far ahead, how big was the booking and what's the occasion. The fact that you look at that and it feeds back into decisions that you make, that I find fascinating. Like you talk about the trust element, that if somebody is willing to book mum's birthday in 3 months and it's an 80th and there's 10 people, that you're cognizant of that is fascinating.
They're bringing their friends in, and that's the thing. If you make the booking, you're responsible. And if we go somewhere and it's shit and you made the booking, guess what? Next time you didn't get to make the fucking booking because last time you fucked it up. And in that as well, in terms of the health of the business, there's a bunch of stuff in that. There's what does the marketing look like around it? Do we need to be recruiting now for it? Are there people that we think are going to be leaving the business sooner rather than later? Do we need to have those conversations now? Do you need to fucking force an outcome with that or not? How much do you need to lean on the centre for what they're doing in terms of, does it fit in with their schedule too? What does the annual leave requirements look like around the people that you've already got now? What does that look like in terms of Melbourne or Sydney's calendar of events? Like, there's heaps of shit.
Yes. And you are able to see all of that?
It takes time, but yeah. It helps us in terms of knowing what to do and when without it getting to the point of we've missed it or we've haven't left ourselves enough time or whatever. The way that Mondays, going back to the thing you said about contact and whatever, Mondays for me used to be almost, it's become less about a day of discovery in terms of, oh fuck, that was what the week was like, and more a day of confirmation of what we thought was going to happen, and then looking forward through confirmation of what we see the week/month ahead being like. I hate surprises, and if places are being run right and there aren't sort of those surprises and it's kind of less crunchiness, I guess, it usually bodes better for the people that are in the trenches. They can come in, there's clear direction, there's enough stuff on, they know what's coming up, and they can just fucking enjoy their time at work.
Yeah, the value of clear expectations is underestimated.
Managing expectations.
Nick, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Pleasure.